guys, Girl Creating here, and happy blessed Wednesday! So today is the middle of the week, and you better know that you've been accomplishing much for Christ, and you're one step closer to becoming that wonderful, true word for Christ. And really, it's something that, yes, we tend to procrastinate sometimes, but really take that effort to really spend time with Christ as much as you can. Really, and I highly keep on recommending out there to just go to church, sit there quietly, kneel there quietly, and just allow yourself to let God speak to you and let Christ speak to you. And it's so beautiful to let, God really speak to you in your heart, and you'll really feel that presence of Christ, especially in adoration. It's so beautiful. I don't know how else to emphasize that, because it's so cute how, well, not cute, but it's so amazing how Jesus Christ is right there. And that's why I always like to remember that story I was told that about the old man saying about, I'm happy, Jesus happy, Jesus looking at me, I'm looking at Jesus, we're both happy. And it's true, really, because it's just that simplicity of just allowing Christ to just speak to you and to just spend time with you, right? So with that in mind, my prayers will continually go out to you and your family during this time of the pandemic. I know we're almost there, so don't become reckless, don't become impatient, because it's all according to God's time. So that's why stay fervent, stay prudent, stay persevering. Stay strong and persevering. Sorry, I forgot that word. Stay strong and persevering in your prayers, and really allow yourself to immerse in the wonderful, beautiful, cherishable memories in person, rather than through a text, a phone call, an email, or a Zoom meeting. It's just, there's nothing better than in person. That human interaction is one thing that we all should be missing right now. So with that in mind, if anything special to say to anybody, family, friends, whatnot, special someone, really take that moment, take that day, and just do it. So with that in mind, I pray that you be well, and as I always love to say before all my videos, let's get started. I want to talk to you guys about the virtue of humility. I love that virtue so much, because it's really, really amazing how our Blessed Mother Mary is the top notch, the top divine notch in terms of that example of humility in itself, because she submitted herself to the will of God and trusting in God in what will happen with her and the plans that God has for her. And so with that in mind, we really have to take it upon ourselves to really run to our Blessed Mother Mary right away for that power and that grace to practice humility, to combat the enemy, because the enemy loves to use that sense of pride in our face. No matter where we are, no matter what we are doing, no matter who we're with, it's there. And so that's why we have to acknowledge it within ourselves and look within ourselves, be like, hey, how is my degree of that sense of pride? Because you have to acknowledge all your weaknesses, your temptations, and your degree of pride, because that way you'll know that, when the enemy's attacking you, your weaknesses and your temptations and your sense of pride is all going to be affected. So when you know, it will trigger you, and you will run to Christ right away to seek for that grace to combat it right away. And from that point on, you will slowly overcome all your fears, your weaknesses, and whatnot. So it's definitely a progression that definitely needs that constant installation here and there, that consistency, running to Christ, seeking for the graces of Christ, and allowing yourself to just, okay, God, Christ, I need you, and I can't do it alone. And that alone in itself, allowing yourself to submit to Christ, is an act of humility in itself. So that's why when you practice that all the time within your life on an everyday basis, you'll be able to really grow in virtue of humility very much. And so that's why I like, when it comes to serving the Lord, in terms of your ministry work, young adult, youth ministry, music ministry, anything ministry within the church and outside of the church, it's great to be able to just acknowledge and remember the fact that you have to desire to ask for that virtue of humility with love for God. You know, it's very important that we constantly remind ourselves about that every single time when you want to serve God, because the enemy will use the biggest obstacle of that sense of pride in every opportunity he can do it. Through your friends, through your family, anything. So you name it, the capital sin of pride is the biggest obstacle ever. So that's why in order for you to overcome that sense of pride, you need to constantly run to our Blessed Mother Mary for that grace to overcome it over time. It doesn't take an overnight change. It takes time. It takes time, especially if you're a stubborn person. Even more so, it will take time. But you have to be able to let God work within you through the Holy Spirit, within your heart, to soften your heart, to really change and have that wonderful transformation, that divine transformation, so that you will become one step closer to Christ himself. So with that in mind, you know, living the virtue of humility is not only a matter of rejecting vanity, pride, selfishness, and whatnot. It's not only just those three: pride, selfishness, and vanity. It's not just those two, just those three. Okay, I know how to count. Not just those three. And it's really like humility itself. It just leads you to recognize your inferiority and that littleness in front of God. That inferiority and that littleness in front of God. And it's very important we, you know, acknowledge that, you know, we are just human. We have our frailty, we're weak, we have our trigger points, we have our weak points, you know, and knowing that and acknowledging that in front of God is in itself an act of humility, you know, because it really recognizes the fact that you can't do it alone. You're just God's creation. You're God's wonderful creation, uniquely made. And, you know, going through this life journey in itself is not going to be easy. You know, like our life in itself here on earth is not meant to be lived in luxury and comfortability. Let's really add to that. Humility just discovers that everything that is good in each and every one of you is literally from God. You know, the fact that you love someone, the fact that you love your family, your friends, your special someone, or your spouse, really that in itself is from God, right? And so that's why with humility, it really recognizes a lot of things that, you know, it gives you that clarity actually. It gives you that clarity in living your life in such a better way, in a more Christian way, instead of just living a life full of pride. And it will just lead to self-destruction, because it will lead to that constant cycle of you seeking for that temporary happiness of this world and not of God. And essentially with that in mind, it's only through the grace of God that gives us again that clear vision of that condition and the awareness of our dignity, of our dignity that comes from humility, you know. And with that in mind, like, the more you grow in humility, the more you grow closer to Christ. That's just how it is. And with that in mind too, the more you grow in humility, the more you will grow closer to our Blessed Mother Mary. She's right there. She is our wonderful mother who is always loving us so much, and she's always watching over us and granting us the grace to become closer and closer to her Son, Jesus Christ. That is her mission. That is what she wants each and every one of us to do, is to draw closer to her so that she will draw us closer to her Son, Jesus Christ. Like, through her is to Jesus. So really, don't forget about her. I know for a fact that a lot of people just focus on just running to Christ and running to God, and that's it. But really though, your life will become so much easier though through her. Like, enduring your burdens, enduring your trials and tribulations becomes so much easier through her. And she allows you to have that grace of that inner peace within your heart to know that everything is okay. And then from that journey in itself. You grow in virtue because you rely more on Jesus Christ and God's plan more rather than on yourself. You know, so really it's just a wonderful way to really practice that virtue of humility in your everyday base. That's why run to her, write letters to her, because really it just allows yourself to just go to her and just tell her everything that you're feeling, what you've been praying about, who you're praying about, what vocation you've been praying about. She will definitely hear you. And from that point on, your hopes will be all placed in her hands, in which she will pass to her son, Jesus Christ. So with that in mind, you know, walking through the way of humility as well, too, it accepts the humiliation, you know, great, big, or small, no matter what it is. And so I've heard in a homily, actually, that in order for you to become deeper in that virtue of humility, pray for humiliation. I'm like, I heard it in a homily and I was like, wow, okay. At first I was like, no. But at the same time, the meaning behind it really made sense, because the more humiliations you have, the more you become humble. You know, I'm not saying really like do crazy things. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, you know, when it comes to different circumstances here, maybe for work, if your boss is yelling at you in front of other people, just take it in and give it all to God. That's it. And, you know, surrender it all to God and just let God take care of it, you know. And even though, you know, for that example, you know, getting embarrassed in front of everyone, getting yelled at by your boss in front of everyone, oh, it can be really embarrassing. So that's what I'm saying, you know, it's just be silent, you know, and surrender it all into God's hands. And I mean, that's just one example in itself, but I'm just saying that, like, in terms of growing the virtue of humility, it's definitely accepting those great, big and small humiliations here and there. And it's not easy. It's not easy, because we humans are like, no, we want to have that, you know, that face in front of other people, right? You know what I mean? So really, though, with the virtue of humility, it's literally having that acceptance to have that struggle to be humble. And that struggle to be humble does not seek out praise. Meaning that when you're doing works for God, works for Christ, works for our Blessed Mother Mary, you're not seeking out that praise, but rather, you know, just allowing yourself to acknowledge that when you get praises, it's just all for the glory of God. That's it. And really, like, whenever we go through any trials and tribulations, any troubles here and there, just tell yourself that, you know, it's all for the love of God, and whatever you're going through, God's got you. As I always like to say to my sisters in Christ, like, I got you. And so it's true. Like, you know, just humility is just joyfully recognizing that we possess nothing that we have not received. It's what it is. And from that point on, it leads you to become God's little children who find their strength in God the Father. So with that in mind, though, just, you know, I want to let you guys know that really just pay attention to our Blessed Mother Mary, how she really set the high, fine example of that virtue of humility so that we will grow in virtue. You know, she set that example for a reason, and she constantly always calls each and every one of us to become closer to her son Jesus. And with that in mind, it's a wonderful way to grow in virtue, in all the virtues, not just humility, but humility is just the one virtue that all of us definitely need to work on within our hearts. Because whatever we do, if you're a good speaker, good talker, good singer, vocalist, whatever talent that God has blessed you with, it's very easy for the enemy to be like, oh, here's all that sense of pride, like, lurking in. Yeah. Like, the the trial is real, like in terms of living your day-to-day life and knowing that that sense of pride is always going to be lurking. So to combat that virtue of humility is the best way to combat it so much, so that the enemy has nothing against you. But really, every one of us has weaknesses and temptations and a trigger point. So it's not like we're perfect. We all have something. So therefore, always have that self-examination within yourself and knowing that what triggers you, what makes you restless, anything that will shake the boat of that trust that you have in Jesus Christ. So with that in mind, God has the best timing in the world. So therefore, with this pandemic, don't let that sense of impatience get to you, but rather to just trust in God's timing. As I said in my yesterday's talk video, really just whatever you're praying for, whoever you're praying for, just trust in God's timing. That's the best way to do it. And from that, when you do it every single day, it will grant you that inner peace to really go in that journey with full peace in your heart, knowing that everything will be okay. And so really, I do that too. Like whatever I'm fervently praying for right now, I just tell God, according to your time, and not my time. So with that in mind, you will be strong. You are strong. You are stronger than you think, especially when you have the power and grace of God, the Holy Spirit. You are way stronger than you think. So with that said, run to our Blessed Mother Mary. She will definitely give you the graces to grow in the virtue of humility so much, and you will see wondrous miracles within that transformation of yourself. So with that said, and as I always love saying in all my videos, don't be afraid to be true warriors of Christ. Bye.